Will love prevail this Christmas as love meets danger? Two hearts are drawn together by faith, but a mysterious letter threatens to tear them apart. The audio pages prevent the Midnight Serenade Chapter 1, The Shadow in the Sanctuary. The air in the Grace Chapel basement smelled of peppermint, fresh ink, and the high-octane scent of industrial-grade coffee. Adanna balanced her laptop on a stack of hymnals, her fingers flying across the trackpad. On her screen, her digital rendering of the Christmas extravaganza banner glowed with gold leaf filigree and deep, royal purples. As a graphic designer, Adanna lived for the details. She adjusted the kerning on the word redemption by 2 pixels, then sighed. Details were easy, it was the big picture of her life that felt blurry. At 28, she was the church's star creative, yet her heart felt like a canvas waiting for its primary color. Adanna, the brochures for the Christmas Eve service need to be at the printers by 5, Mrs. Higgins, the administrative deacon, chapped as she bustled past. And Pastor Emenike is back from Lagos. He's in the sanctuary now, looking for the media proofs. Adanna's heart did a sudden, unscripted somersault. Pastor Emenike. She had known him for 3 years, ever since he arrived as the youth pastor before rising to lead the congregation. He was a man who spoke with the authority of a prophet but listened with the gentleness of a brother. To the congregation, he was a pillar of strength. To Adanna, he was the man whose laugh made her forget her own name. She gathered her iPad and a stack of physical proofs, smoothing her wool skirt. She found him standing near the altar, bathed in the multicolored light filtering through the stained glass windows. He was taller than she remembered, his shoulders broad under a charcoal blazer. When he turned, his eyes, usually bright with an infectious joy, seemed clouded, rimmed with a weariness that Lagos traffic alone couldn't explain. Adanna, he said, his voice a low, melodic baritone that vibrated in her chest. You've outdone yourself with the visuals this year. The social media campaign is breathtaking. Thank you, Pastor, she replied, trying to maintain professional composure while her pulse raced. I wanted the theme of light in the darkness to feel literal this year. How was the conference? He didn't answer immediately. He looked around the empty sanctuary, his gaze lingering on the shadows in the rafters. The crinkle at the corners of his eyes, the one she loved, was missing. Instead, there was a sharp tension in his jaw. The conference was informative, he said vaguely. He stepped closer, and for a moment, the scent of his sandalwood cologne enveloped her. Adanna, can I talk to you for a sec? Somewhere less public. Her stomach dropped. Was she being let go? Was there a problem with her designs? She followed him through the side door leading to the prayer garden. The December air was crisp, biting through her thin sweater, but she hardly felt the cold. Once the heavy oak door clicked shut behind them, Emenike's composure fractured. He reached into his blazer and pulled out a crumpled piece of cream-colored stationery. His hand, usually steady enough to perform baptisms without a tremor, was shaking. I found this tucked under my hotel door in Lagos on the final night, he whispered. I thought it was a prank. But then, I found a second one in my car this morning. Here, in the church parking lot. Adanna took the paper. The message was constructed from letters cut out of a magazine, a jagged, ugly contrast to the elegant paper. The sins of the father are visited upon the son. The Okoro tragedy is not buried. If you do not leave this city and step down from the pulpit by Christmas Day, the truth will bleed out. Blood for blood, Emenike. Run while you can. Adanna felt a chill that had nothing to do with the wind. The Okoro tragedy. Emenike, what is this talking about? Your father was a missionary. Your family is. My family has secrets, Adanna. Secrets I didn't even know until my father's deathbed confession 2 years ago, he said, his voice cracking. He told me about a fire in a village near the border. A business dispute that went wrong. He spent his whole life trying to atone for it, but it seems someone isn't finished with the bill. He looked at her, his eyes locking onto hers with a raw vulnerability that stole her breath. They aren't just threatening my reputation. They mentioned you, Adanna. In the second note. They know you're the one. He stopped himself, but the implication hung in the air, heavy and sweet and terrifying. "We'll face this together," Adanna said, her voice firmer than she felt. She reached out, her hand covering his on the cold stone bench. "We aren't running. We are going to find out who is doing this. God doesn't give us a spirit of fear, Emenike." He squeezed her hand, his thumb brushing against her knuckles. For a fleeting second, the terror receded, replaced by a spark of something electric. But the moment was shattered by a sharp crack, the sound of a dry branch breaking behind the hedges. Adanna whirled around. A tall, hooded figure was standing by the garden gate, holding a heavy metal canister. Before they could react, the figure tossed something over the fence. It wasn't a bomb, but a heavy, leather-bound book that landed at Emenike's feet with a dull thud. The stranger vanished into the afternoon mist before Emenike could reach the gate. Adanna picked up the book. It was an old ledger, the edges charred by fire. She opened the front cover, and a photograph fell out. It was a picture of a young Pastor Emenike, but his face had been violently crossed out with red ink. Below the photo, a single word was written in what looked like fresh, wet paint: judgment. Suddenly, Adanna's phone buzzed in her pocket. It was an alert from the church's security system. "Motion detected in the main office." "Emenike," she gasped, showing him the screen. "Someone is inside. Right now." As they raced back toward the building, a plume of thick, black smoke began to curl from the window of the pastor's study. Chapter 2, Out of the Ashes. The sanctuary, once a place of peace, was now a corridor of chaos. Smoke, thick, acrid, and smelling of burnt paper, poured from the hallway leading to the administrative wing. Emenike didn't hesitate. He stripped off his charcoal blazer, wrapping it around his face to mask the fumes. "Emenike, wait. The fire department is on the way." Adanna shouted, her voice hitching as she gripped the charred ledger to her chest. "The archives, Adanna. If those records burn, we lose the only proof of what happened in that village," he yelled back, his voice muffled by the fabric. Adanna watched in terror as he disappeared into the black haze. She couldn't just stand there. Her mind raced through the floor plan of the church she had mapped out 1,000 times for her design projects. She knew the back ventilation exit in the basement might be drawing the smoke away from the side stairwell. She sprinted toward the side entrance, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. As she reached the stairwell, she saw him. Emenike was stumbling out of his smoke-filled office, clutching a small, fireproof lockbox. He fell to one knee, coughing violently. Adanna was at his side in an instant, holding his arm over her shoulder. "I've got you. Lean on me." They burst through the heavy fire doors into the crisp December evening just as the sirens of the fire trucks wailed in the distance. They collapsed onto the frost-covered grass of the church lawn, gasping for air. Emenike's face was streaked with soot, his white shirt ruined, but he gripped that lockbox as if it were a lifeline. "Are you okay?" she whispered, her hands trembling as she wiped a smudge of ash from his forehead. He nodded, his breath coming in ragged hitches. "I am fine." "But Adanna, the fire didn't start from an electrical short." "I saw it. A canister of accelerant was thrown through the window. They wanted me to see it. They wanted me to know they could reach me anywhere." He looked up at the church. The fire department was already jumping into action, dousing the flames before they could reach the main sanctuary. The damage was contained to the office, but the message was loud and clear: nowhere is sacred. An hour later, tucked away in the safety of Adanna's small, brightly lit apartment, the gravity of the situation settled over them. Adanna had made ginger tea, and Emenike sat at her small kitchen table, the charred ledger and the lockbox sitting between them like unexploded bombs. "We have to open it," Adanna said softly. "The letter mentioned the Okoro tragedy. If we are going to fight this, we need to know what we are fighting." Emenike took a deep breath, whispered a short prayer for strength, and keyed in the code to the lockbox. Inside were yellowed newspaper clippings from 25 years ago and a series of handwritten letters from his father. As they pored over the documents, a grim story emerged. Emenike's father hadn't just been a missionary, he had been an overseer for a land development project in a small village. A fire, accidental, according to the official report, had claimed the lives of a local family, the Okoros, during a heated dispute over the land where a new clinic was to be built. My father spent the rest of his life sending money to a survivor, Emenike whispered, reading a bank ledger. A son. Chidi Okoro. He was only 10 years old when it happened. And the payment stopped 2 years ago, Adanna noted, pointing to the last entry. Right when your father passed away. Because I didn't know, Emenike realized, his face pale. I thought the monthly transfers were just part of his mission work. I stopped them because I couldn't find the recipients. Chidi must think I cut him off out of spite. He thinks I'm enjoying the spoils of my father's sin while he rots in bitterness. Adanna looked at the photograph that had fallen out of the ledger earlier, the one with Emenike's face crossed out. This isn't just about money anymore, Emenike. This is about a soul consumed by revenge. He's been watching you. He's been waiting for the right moment to tear your life down. He wants me to skip town so he can expose this and ruin the church's reputation, Emenike said. If the congregation thinks the man of God they trust is living on blood money, the ministry is over. Adanna reached across the table, taking his hand. Her touch was warm, a stark contrast to the cold fear he was feeling. The truth sets us free, Emenike. We tell the board. We find Chidi. We offer him the peace your father tried to give him. Emenike looked at her, his eyes shining with a sudden, fierce admiration. You're incredible, Adanna. Most people would have run the other way when the smoke started. Why are you staying? The air in the kitchen changed. The ticking of the wall clock seemed to grow louder. Adanna felt the heat rise in her cheeks. Because my faith isn't just about the easy days. And because. She hesitated, then found her courage. Because I believe in the man you are, not just the title you hold. Emenike stood up, stepping around the table. He didn't say a word, but he reached out, his hand cupping her cheek. For a heartbeat, the danger outside didn't matter. The world was just the two of them, the scent of ginger tea, and the unspoken promise in his eyes. He leaned down, his forehead resting against hers. I don't deserve you, he breathed. God gives us grace we don't deserve, she whispered back. Just as he began to move closer, his phone on the table vibrated violently. It was an unknown number. Adanna felt a jolt of ice return to her veins. Emenike answered, putting it on speaker. You're late, Pastor, a raspy, distorted voice hissed through the line. I saw you leave with the girl. Brave. But foolish. Check your front door. Emenike lunged for the door, Adanna right behind him. He threw it open. There was no one in the hallway, but hanging from the doorknob by a piece of twine was a small, hand-carved wooden cross, the kind Emenike's father used to give out during his missions. It was snapped in half. Taped to the broken wood was a small, high-definition photo. Adanna gasped, clutching her throat. It was a photo of her, taken through her own apartment window, just 5 minutes ago. The voice on the phone chuckled, a dry, hollow sound. Christmas Eve is in 3 days, Emenike. If you're still in the pulpit for the midnight service, the girl won't just be a photographer's subject. She'll be a sacrifice. The line went dead. Emenike slammed the door and locked it, his eyes wild with a protective fury Adanna had never seen. That's it. You're going to a hotel. Somewhere safe. I won't let you be a pawn in this. No, Adanna said, her voice trembling but resolute. If I leave, he wins. He wants to isolate you. If we're going to find Chidi Okoro before Christmas Eve, we have to use the one thing he doesn't think we have. What's that? Emenike asked. Adanna looked at the charred ledger. The contact information for the lawyer who handled your father's mission payments. He's the only one who knows where Chidi is. She grabbed her laptop, but as she opened it, she noticed something strange. Her desktop background, a design of a peaceful nativity scene, had been changed. In its place was a grainy, black and white video feed. Adanna's blood ran cold as she realized what she was looking at. It was a live stream of the Grace Chapel basement, where a figure was currently pouring liquid over the stacks of Christmas brochures she had worked so hard to finish. The figure looked directly into the camera, and even through the mask, the eyes were full of a terrifying, familiar hate. The figure held up a lighter, the flame flickering with a rhythmic, taunting motion. "He's back at the church," Adanna whispered. "And he's not just burning paper this time." Chapter 3: The Judas in the Pews. The drive back to Grace Chapel was a blur of neon Christmas lights and screeching tires. Emenike drove with a focused intensity, his knuckles white against the steering wheel. Adanna kept her eyes glued to her laptop, watching the grainy live feed. The figure in the basement moved with a chilling deliberateness, soaking the stacks of Christmas extravaganza brochures in gasoline. "He's not just destroying the work, Emenike," Adanna whispered, her voice tight with realization. "He's erasing the message. He's trying to kill the light before Christmas even begins." "He won't," Emenike vowed. "We called the police, but they are 10 minutes out. If he lights that match, the whole basement goes, and the sanctuary is right above it." They pulled into the darkened parking lot, overshooting the lines. Emenike reached into the glove box and pulled out a heavy industrial flashlight. "Stay in the car, Adanna. Lock the doors." "Not a chance," she snapped, grabbing her own heavy-duty camera bag. "I know the layout of the ventilation duct and the crawl spaces better than you do. If he tries to slip out the back, I'll be the one to spot him." They entered through the side kitchen door, the air already thick with the pungent, oily scent of fuel. The church was silent, save for the rhythmic drip, drip, drip of liquid hitting the concrete downstairs. They moved like shadows, descending the stairs into the basement. The glow of a single lantern illuminated the room. The figure was standing by the central pillar, back turned to them. He was holding a silver lighter, flipping the lid open and shut, click, clack, click, clack. "Chidi." Emenike's voice rang out, steady and filled with a strange, mournful authority. "Is that you?" The figure stiffened but didn't turn. "Chidi Okoro died in that fire 25 years ago, Pastor. The boy who survived, he's just a ghost looking for a place to rest." The voice didn't sound like the raspy distortion from the phone. It was younger, smoother. Adanna's heart stopped. She recognized that voice. She had heard it every Sunday for the last 2 years. The figure turned slowly, pulling down the black gaiter mask. "Brother Samuel." Adanna gasped, her legs nearly giving way. Samuel was the church's head of outreach. He was the man who organized the food drives, the one who greeted newcomers with a wide, bright smile. He was the person Emenike trusted most with the church's community secrets. "Samuel, why?" Emenike's flashlight beam wavered. "You've been by my side. You've prayed with me. You've been a brother to me." "I am Chidi's younger brother," Samuel said, his eyes wild and wet with tears. "My mother was pregnant when your father's dispute burned our house down. She survived just long enough to give birth to me in a shack. Chidi raised me on stories of the holy man who murdered our future. He spent his life tracking your family, taking the hush money while planning the ultimate harvest. The letters, the fire earlier today." Adanna started, stepping forward. "All part of the plan," Samuel hissed, his thumb hovering over the lighter spark wheel. "Chidi is the one who sent the letters. He's the one who wanted the money. But I wanted justice. I joined this church to see if you were as righteous as they said. And I saw it. I saw how everyone loves you. How Adanna looks at you. It made me sick. Why do you get a life of light when our lives were nothing but ash?" "Samuel, listen to me," Emenike said, dropping his flashlight and holding out his hands, palms up. "My father was wrong. He carried that guilt to his grave, and I carry the weight of it now. But killing these people, burning this house of God, it won't bring your mother back. It won't give you the peace you're looking for. Peace is a lie told by the winners." Samuel screamed. He flicked the lighter. A small, orange flame danced in the dim light. "Wait." Adanna cried out. "Samuel, look at the brochures. Look at what you're about to burn." She kicked one of the soaked booklets toward him with her foot. It flipped open to the center spread. It was a photo of the church's new community center, the one Emenike had insisted be built in the poorest part of the city. "The center is being named after your mother, Samuel," Adanna said, her voice trembling. "Emenike didn't know your name then, but he found the name of the woman who died in the Okoro fire in his father's old records. He's been planning to dedicate the Christmas Eve service to her, to honor her memory and offer a scholarship in her name." Samuel looked down at the paper. The gasoline had turned the pages translucent, but the name, the Mary Okoro Memorial Center, was visible in bold, gold letters. The lighter shook in his hand. For a moment, the silence was so heavy it felt like it would crush them. As the police led Samuel away after intercepting his plans, the basement of Grace Chapel was a tomb of gasoline-slicked concrete and shattered glass. Emenike stood paralyzed, his eyes fixed on the video playing on Adanna's phone. The grainy footage of the innocent children at the mission house, unaware that Chidi was outside with a canister of fuel, felt like a physical blow. "He's not just after me anymore," Emenike whispered, his voice trembling with a mix of horror and resolve. "He's targeting the heart of this community to make me watch it break." Adanna gripped his arm, her eyes flashing with a desperate urgency. "We don't have time for the police to process this scene, Emenike. Chidi is already there. If we wait for a tactical team to coordinate, that wooden porch will be an inferno before they arrive." Emenike looked at the lead officer, who was occupied with Samuel's confession. He knew that following protocol would mean waiting, and waiting meant losing the children. He grabbed his keys from the chart table. "The mission house is 15 minutes away if we take the back roads," Emenike said, his face hardening into a mask of determination. "Adanna, stay here with the officers. It's safer." "No," she countered, already heading for the stairs. "I have the master override for the mission house's smart system on my laptop. If you go alone, you're just a target. If you go with me, we have a fighting chance to stop him before he even strikes a match." They sprinted out of the basement, bursting through the side exit into the freezing night air. The sirens were still wailing behind them, but they were driving toward a different kind of silence, the kind that precedes a catastrophe. As Emenike threw the car into gear and roared out of the church parking lot, Adanna opened her laptop on her lap, her fingers flying across the keys to bypass the mission house's firewall. "We are coming for them," she breathed, watching the GPS dot crawl toward the outskirts of town. Chapter 4: The Altar of Ash. The drive to the old mission house felt like a descent into a nightmare. Located on the outskirts of the city, the structure was a historical landmark, a sprawling, timber-framed building where Emenike's father had begun his ministry 40 years ago. Now, it served as a community center and a rehearsal space for the Angels of Grace children's choir. "He knows the police are watching the church now," Emenike said, his voice tight as he gripped the steering wheel. "He's shifted the battlefield. He wants me to choose between my life and the lives of those children." Adanna was frantically typing on her laptop, her screen reflecting in her wide, anxious eyes. "I've bypassed the mission house's outdated security hub. Emenike, the fire alarms have been manually disabled from the inside. He's already been in there. We can't wait for the police to coordinate a perimeter," Emenike said, his jaw set. "If they roll up with sirens blaring, Chidi will light that porch before they even put the cars in park. I have to go in quietly." "We go in quietly," Adanna corrected. "Adanna, no. It's too dangerous. I have the remote access to the building's smart lighting system," she argued, showing him her phone. "If I can get close enough to stay on the local Wi-Fi, I can trigger the overhead sprinklers and the emergency strobes. I can blind him long enough for you to get the kids out. You need me, Emenike. Not as a designer, but as your partner." Emenike looked at her, the fear for her safety warring with the deep, burgeoning love he felt for her strength. He nodded slowly. "Stay behind me. If anything goes wrong, you run. You don't look back. Promise me." "I promise," she lied. They reached the mission house 10 minutes later. It sat at the end of a long, dark driveway, silhouetted against the silver moon. The sound of high-pitched, angelic voices drifted through the cold air. "Sleep in heavenly peace." The contrast between the beautiful music and the smell of gasoline was sickening. Adanna crept behind a row of overgrown hibiscus bushes, her phone glowing dimly. She watched the screen as the signal bars climbed. She whispered. I have control of the hall lights and the kitchen fire suppression system. Emenike moved like a ghost toward the side porch. He saw Chidi. The man was a shadow among shadows, standing by the main support beam with a heavy flare gun in one hand and a canister in the other. He wasn't just planning to start a fire, he was planning an explosion. Emenike stepped into the light of the porch lamp. Chidi. I'm here. Let the children go. Chidi spun around, the flare gun leveled at Emenike's chest. His face was a mask of jagged scars and raw, unadulterated grief. You're late, Pastor. I was starting to think you didn't care about your little sheep. This is between us, Emenike said, taking a slow step forward. The debt is mine. Not the children's. Not Adanna's. Look at me, Chidi. Look at the man you want to kill. I am not my father. You are his blood. Chidi roared. You live in his house, you preach his words, you eat the food bought with his lies. Every breath you take is a breath stolen from my mother. Inside, the music stopped. Adanna could see the silhouettes of the children and the choir director, Sister Clara, frozen in the window. They had heard the shouting. Now, Adanna. Emenike yelled. Adanna swiped her thumb across the screen. Suddenly, the porch lights began to strobe with a blinding, frantic intensity. The industrial sprinklers in the eaves hissed to life, dousing Chidi and the gasoline-soaked wood in a freezing torrent of water. What? No! Chidi screamed, shielding his eyes from the flashing lights. Emenike lunged. He tackled Chidi, the two men crashing into the wet porch. The flare gun skittered across the wood, spinning toward the edge. Get the kids out! Emenike shouted over the roar of the water and the strobe. Adanna didn't hesitate. She ran toward the side door, bursting into the rehearsal hall. Sister Clara. Get the children out through the back kitchen exit. Move. Now. The children, frightened and crying, scrambled toward the rear of the building. Adanna stayed behind, counting them as they ran past. 10, 11, 12. Clara, is that everyone? Little Toby. Clara gasped, pointing toward the small prayer closet near the front of the hall. He's hiding in there. He's terrified of the flashing lights. Adanna turned back, sprinting toward the front of the building. She grabbed the 5-year-old boy just as a massive boom shook the floorboards. Outside, Chidi had reached the flare gun. Even through the drenching water, the chemical spark of the flare had found a pocket of gasoline that hadn't been washed away. A wall of blue and orange flame erupted between the porch and the main hall. Emenike! Adanna screamed. Through the smoke and the fire, she saw them. Emenike had pinned Chidi, but the older man was fighting with the strength of a fanatic. The porch was collapsing. Adanna, get out. Emenike's voice was strained. The support beams are going. I'm not leaving you. She handed Toby to Sister Clara at the back door and turned back to the fire. She saw a heavy fire extinguisher mounted on the wall. She grabbed it, pulled the pin, and began to blast a path through the flames toward the porch. She reached the door just as Emenike managed to wrench the flare gun from Chidi's hand. He threw it into the wet grass and began to drag Chidi away from the burning structure. But Chidi wasn't done. He pulled a long, jagged knife from his belt. If I go to hell, you're coming with me. He lunged at Emenike's back. No. Adanna swung the heavy metal fire extinguisher with every ounce of strength she possessed. It caught Chidi on the shoulder, knocking him off balance. Emenike spun around, catching Adanna by the waist and pulling her back just as the mission house porch groaned and caved in, a shower of sparks flying into the night sky. They scrambled back into the grass, gasping for air. Chidi lay a few feet away, stunned and defeated, his face illuminated by the fire. The police sirens were finally audible, the red and blue lights reflecting off the trees. Emenike pulled Adanna into a fierce, trembling embrace. He buried his face in her neck, his heart thudding against her chest. I thought I lost you, he whispered. I thought I lost everything. You can't lose me, she said, tears blurring her vision. God isn't finished with our story yet. The police swarmed the yard, taking Chidi into custody. Paramedics wrapped Adanna and Emenike in blankets. The children were safe, huddled in a nearby van, being given hot cocoa. As the fireman worked to extinguish the blaze, the chief walked over to Emenike. "It's a miracle the whole place didn't go up. That lighting trick bought us the time we needed. You two are lucky to be alive." Emenike looked at Adanna, his eyes filled with an intensity that made her breath hitch. It wasn't luck. It was grace. But as the police began to process the scene, one of the officers called out, "Pastor, you might want to see this." They walked over to Chidi's car, which was parked in the trees. The trunk was open. Inside was a stack of documents, not from the Okoro tragedy, but from the church's current financial records. Adanna peered in. "Those are the design invoices I submitted last week." "Why would he have those?" Emenike picked up a folder. His face went stone cold. "These aren't just invoices. Someone has been altering them. They've been funneling money out of the mission fund and making it look like it was going to your design firm, Adanna." Adanna felt the world tilt. "What? I never received that money." "I know you didn't," Emenike said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "But according to these papers, you've stolen over $50,000 from the church." He looked at Chidi, who was being put into the back of a squad car. Chidi smiled, a slow, bloody grin. "I wasn't the only one who wanted you gone, Pastor," Chidi shouted. "I provided the muscle, but the brain is still inside your church. And tomorrow morning, the police won't be looking for me. They'll be looking for your pretty little designer." Adanna looked down at her hands. They were covered in soot and ash. Suddenly, she heard the click of handcuffs. "Adanna Amodi," the officer said, his voice regretful. "I'm sorry, but we have a warrant for your arrest for grand larceny and embezzlement." Emenike stepped forward, but the officer held up a hand. "The evidence is in her name, Pastor. We have to take her in." As Adanna was led toward the police car, she looked back at Emenike. The man who had just risked his life for her was standing in the shadows of the burning mission house, looking at the documents in his hand with a look of utter devastation. Chapter 5: The Midnight Miracle. The holding cell at the precinct was cold, smelling of floor wax and old coffee. Adanna sat on the narrow bench, her evening gown ruined by soot and water. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the flames of the mission house, but the fire in her heart was even more intense. She wasn't just fighting for her freedom, she was fighting for the integrity of the ministry and the man she loved. "Adanna." She looked up. Emenike was standing on the other side of the plexiglass, his eyes bloodshot and his voice hoarse. He wasn't supposed to be there, visiting hours were over, but the local police commander was a member of Grace Chapel, and for once, Emenike had used his influence to get 5 minutes. "They think I did it, Emenike," she whispered, her voice cracking. "The paper trail, it's all tied to my business accounts. But I never saw a kobo of that money." "I know," Emenike said, pressing his palm against the glass. "I spent the last 4 hours at the church office with a forensic accountant I called from Lagos. We found the digital backdoor. The person who framed you didn't just have your login, they had your stylistic patterns. They used your design software to forge the signatures." Adanna's mind raced. "Only one other person has access to my design cloud. I gave it to them for the Christmas brochure collaboration because I trusted their eye for detail." Emenike nodded, his expression grim. "Mrs. Higgins." Adanna gasped. "The sweet, bustling administrative deacon. Why? She's been with the church for 20 years. She's Chidi's aunt," Emenike revealed. "She took the job decades ago under a maiden name. She's been the inside man 4 years, waiting for the right moment to strike. She funneled the money to Chidi to fund his lifestyle and his vendetta, and when she realized we were getting close to the truth, she pinned it all on you. But Emenike, if she's still there, she's going to destroy the final evidence before you can prove it," Adanna said, standing up. "The Christmas Eve service starts in 3 hours. If she's not stopped, she'll disappear with the rest of the mission funds. I'm going back, Emenike said. But the police won't release you until the lead investigator clears the digital logs and is out on another call. Adanna. I might have to preach this service without you. Preach the truth, Emenike, she urged him. Don't worry about me. God is our witness. The Grace Chapel sanctuary was packed to the rafters. Thousands of candles flickered in the hands of the congregation, a sea of light that usually brought Emenike joy. But tonight, his heart felt heavy. He stood backstage, watching Mrs. Higgins calmly hand out the programs, the very programs Adanna had designed. As the choir began the opening notes of Silent Night, Emenike stepped onto the pulpit. He didn't look at his notes. He looked at the empty seat in the front row where Adanna should have been sitting. Tonight, Emenike began, his voice echoing with a soulful resonance, we talk about the greatest gift ever given. But we also talk about the cost of that gift. We talk about truth, sacrifice, and the shadows that try to hide the light. In the back of the room, Mrs. Higgins froze. Emenike locked eyes with her. Something they can hide behind the cross while they betray the flock, Emenike continued, his voice rising in authority. Something that because a sin is old, it is forgotten. But God sees. And tonight, the truth will be laid bare. Suddenly, the giant projector screens Adanna had programmed for the service flickered. Instead of the lyrics to the hymn, a series of bank statements began to scroll. Highlighted in red were the transfers, not to Adanna Amodi's account, but to a hidden offshore account titled Okoro Heritage. Mrs. Higgins turned to run, but the doors were blocked by two plainclothes officers. Just then, the back door swung open. Adanna stood there, wrapped in a fresh wool coat, her face radiant despite the ordeal. The investigator had found the deleted logs on Higgins' computer just in time. The congregation gasped as Mrs. Higgins was led out in silence. The tension in the room snapped, replaced by a profound, holy hush. Emenike walked down from the pulpit. He didn't care about the protocol or the thousands of eyes watching him. He walked straight to Adanna. The truth is out, he whispered to her, loud enough for the front rows to hear. And the secret that haunted my family is finally at rest. But there is one more truth I need to say. He took the microphone and dropped to one knee. The church went so silent you could hear the wax dripping from the candles. Adanna, you stood by me in the smoke and the fire. You saw the worst of my past and you chose to be my future. You are the bravest, most beautiful soul I have ever known. Will you trust me to keep you safe and love you for all eternity? Tears streamed down Adanna's face, sparkling like diamonds in the candlelight. She looked at the man who had become her hero, her partner, and her heart's home. Yes, she whispered. 1,000 times, yes. As they embraced, the clock struck midnight. Outside, the city's fireworks erupted, lighting up the sky in bursts of gold and crimson. The explosive truth wasn't the scandal or the fire, it was the fact that God could take the charred remains of a tragedy and build a temple of love. The Okoro secret was buried, not under more lies, but under the weight of forgiveness. And as the choir began a triumphant rendition of Joy to the World, Adanna and Emenike stood hand in hand, a testament to the fact that even the darkest suspense is no match for a love wrapped in grace. If you enjoyed the story, please like and subscribe to stay updated on more exciting tales.